Spain surprises the world and closes its airspace to US military aircraft. Why does Pedro Sanchez insist on confronting the world's #1 superpower? And what is the secret behind this new weapon that Israel used last night, which they are now calling the soft bombs? Will Iran respond with the same bombs? What is happening behind the scenes? Will Karak Island in Iran be the major turning point in this war? Those are all topics we'll cover today, but after this break, stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. Welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing, in this episode of the Opinion Series, which we always dedicate to following the latest developments in this war taking place in the Middle East between Iran and the IBSTI alliance. The first thing we will start with in today's episode is this exciting development that some sources inside Iran revealed this morning. Israel used it for the first time in this war, and it falls under what is called soft bombs, known as soft bombs. What exactly is this new weapon in this war? Graphite bombs? Last night, dear viewers, there was a sudden power outage in a number of strategic areas in Iran, where strategic headquarters are located, such as military bases of the Revolutionary Guard forces and so on. The power outage lasted for hours before it came back again. After investigating and looking into the reasons behind this power outage, when Iran conducted this investigation and inquiry, it became clear that Israel had struck these areas with graphite bombs. And these bombs are called, as I mentioned, soft bombs. Why? Because they don't kill, they don't destroy, they're only used to disable electrical power systems. This weapon is a bomb, and when this bomb is dropped next to high voltage power transmission lines, it spreads a large number of chemically treated carbon fibers, creating electrical contact points, or what is called a circuit, which causes a short circuit in these power lines, and the electricity is cut off. This outage may not last long. It might last for hours, or it might not last for days, depending on the ability to restore the power again. Usually it lasts for about 24 hours at most, according to the current capabilities. But it causes confusion, especially when the outage affects strategic areas like command headquarters, military bases, and so on. The first use of this type of bomb was by America, and it was in Iraq during the Second Gulf War in 1990. These bombs were used to cut off electricity to 85% of Iraq's population. This weapon was also used a second time by NATO as well. That was in the Kosovo War in 1999, and as a result, 70% of Serbia's power grid was disabled. It was also used in the Iraq War in 2003. So, continuously, these bombs are very important in such wars. Why? Because they play a role in confusing the enemy. That means the electricity is cut off without any destruction, without any trace, because there is an attack. For example, there is no destruction of these facilities or the energy infrastructure and so on. So today, when Israel uses these bombs, this is considered a very serious escalation. It could lead to completely opposite results, because Israel thinks using these bombs will go unnoticed. It thinks that this will not be discovered, meaning it believes it will escape punishment and avoid an Iranian response. Meaning that the electricity will be cut off in these areas as they want, without any destruction, and as a result, the Iranians will not know the reason for this power outage. This is what will make Israel avoid an Iranian response. A reciprocal response means striking power stations in Israel, or those operated by companies linked to the Epstein alliance. That means in various Gulf countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so on. But the Iranian experts quickly discovered this attack, found the cause of the outage, and restored the electricity even faster. And there might be a crushing Iranian response in the next few hours, which confirms how prepared Iran is for this war. We might see a similar response with the same kind of bombs as well. We don't know what Iran has today. It could be that they possess such bombs, ballistic missiles carrying cluster warheads with dozens of these graphite bombs. No one knows exactly how the Iranian response will be, but we are all convinced now that the response is definitely coming. Given what we've seen throughout this war, the Epstein alliance has started to suffer as a result of this tit-for-tat policy, and today it is unable to escalate with such strikes. Be absolutely sure that if it weren't for this successful strategy that Iran is following today in this war, the tit-for-tat policy, if Iran really wasn't able to respond just as successfully and effectively in its response, Iran would not have survived at all today. They would have destroyed all the facilities, the energy facilities, the infrastructure, and so on. We would have seen the scenario of destruction in Gaza repeated in Tehran and repeated in various Iranian cities. We would have seen thousands of civilian deaths every day. They would have set Iran back 100 years today. So the only thing that keeps them from doing this is the Iranian threat of retaliation, their absolute certainty that Iran can actually respond successfully with the same impact. And we have clearly seen this throughout this war. I mean, since the beginning of this war. They strike civilian residential buildings, meaning we might also see an Iranian missile come down and destroy residential buildings in Tel Aviv or elsewhere. They strike nuclear research centers, so we might also see an Iranian missile hitting nuclear research centers in Dimona. They strike an energy facility, so we might see the same response, meaning an energy facility catching fire in different areas. Today it was in Haifa as well, and so on. And that's without even mentioning the response against Israeli military bases, because there is a lot of secrecy about the losses, injuries, and the impact on these bases. No one knows exactly the extent of these losses except America and Israel. No one knows today the fate of Netanyahu, nor the fate of the Israeli army chief, or the Navy commander, or the Air Force commander, and so on. All of them today are hiding in underground shelters, and no one knows whether they are alive, dead, or what. Only today, dear viewers. There was a very large missile strike launched by Iran on command and control centers, on military bases, on military warehouses, and on places where soldiers and pilots were hiding, and so on. In every country in the region, in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in the UAE, there was a massive attack, but no one knows the impact of this attack, the exact death toll. Who are the dead? Are they soldiers? Are they generals in the army? Or what does it mean? The coalition? The Epstein coalition doesn't have the courage to admit to losses at all, unlike Iran. When Iran's leaders are assassinated, Iran comes out and admits it and announces it officially, just as they did today, announcing the martyrdom of the naval forces commander. But Epstein's coalition doesn't have the courage at all to admit to such losses. And when Iran strikes a certain facility in Gulf countries, they say it and admit it publicly, yes, we struck this facility. And when they don't strike it, they also come out and say, we are not the ones who struck the facility. So here is the big difference between Iran and Epstein's coalition. Today they are talking about an upcoming ground operation, and they are talking about occupying Karg Island or the other islands, meaning in the Strait of Hormuz. Is it possible for this to happen? Yes, it's possible, because now things are being managed foolishly. I mean, when did they get closer? Just as Trump got involved in this war, in this quagmire, it's very possible that he could get even more involved in other bigger quagmires. Therefore, the biggest disaster that could befall America is if Trump sends the occupation forces to these islands. If Trump pushes to do this foolishness. We're talking about islands that are just a few kilometers away from Iranian territory. And this Iranian land has very difficult terrain. Right in front of these islands there are mountains, there are rugged terrains, all filled with missile systems, rocket launchers, artillery, and drones hidden in these mountains. So the attack here is completely different, because we're talking about a short distance. That means the attack will involve ballistic missiles, old short-range missiles, artillery weapons, and rocket launchers, all of which Iran possesses in large numbers. That's why America can't, occupy these islands like Karg Island. Maybe it actually can do that, given the air capabilities it really has, but the challenge is that it can't stay there. Will it be able to face this trap? What awaits it? They say today that the goal is to seize the island through which 90% of Iranian oil is exported. And so they present it in negotiations with the Iranians, meaning they make it a bargaining point. They say, get rid of these missiles you have and we will give you this island. What's strange is that they think this way, meaning that by doing this, Iran will be subdued or brought to heel. It's clear that this war, dear viewers, will be the reason for America's collapse. It will be the reason for the decline of America's power and prestige, which has lasted for many decades. It will restore power and prestige to the Islamic world. Because Iran will be the one leading the Middle East from now on, after this war, and it will even lead all the countries of the global south, because after this war, it will be the successful model of resilience and confrontation. Also, dear viewers, today we saw another strong decision, one of the brave decisions that this country has accustomed us to. Spain, since Pedro Sanchez became Prime Minister, after the strong decisions regarding migrants and providing all the facilities, unlike other European countries that are currently restricting migrants. And after we saw how Pedro Sanchez criticized Israel and his clear and courageous support for Gaza, and after Spain stood up to America, the world's leading superpower, and prevented it from using the American military bases on its territory in this war against Iran, today another similar decision has been made regarding the military. What did Spain say to America today? It said that from now on, no American plane will pass through its airspace to participate in this war against Iran. It said that as of today, Spanish airspace is off limits to American military aircraft heading toward this war. Spain is saying it openly. We will not participate in a war that is not ours. And pay close attention, this comes at a time when Trump threatened Spain with cutting off trade relations. But at the same time, he can't actually cut these ties. They're just statements and threats. Why? Because quite simply, America is the one benefiting from this trade relationship. America exports products to Spain worth about $30 billion. But what does it gain in return? America only imports products from Spain worth $18 or $19 billion. This means that America makes almost $10 billion from Spain every year. So it's not in Trump's interest, nor in America's interest, to cut ties with Spain completely. And this is exactly what Pedro Sanchez is taking advantage of today in a good way, so that he can take this brave stand for what is right, with the Muslims in Gaza, with the Muslims in Iran, against America. This country, Spain, I have said it before and I repeat it today, Spain is the best country to live in Europe from all aspects. Socially, family-wise, in terms of health, quality of life, and so on. And the Spanish people are among the very best in Europe, and especially the great Andalusian people who have a strong connection to Muslims and to Muslim history and culture. That's why it's not strange to see the leader of this country stand with what is right and stand with Muslims when he finds them steadfast and not submissive, meaning they don't accept humiliation, defeat, and so on. So today, in reality, what we see as great once again is not America. What we see as great today, once again, is Spain, Iran, Yemen, and so on. Countries like these that stand up to oppression and tyranny. This is what we have today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings. See you next time.